Hello, I'm Carrie and welcome to episode 5. I am a knitter and knitwear designer based out of Columbus, Ohio, and this is my knitting studio. It's my little retreat where I get to work on all of my knitting projects and designs when I'm not at work chasing after my young daughter or trying to keep the weeds from overtaking my garden. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me today to chat about knitting. It's been about 4 weeks since I last recorded a podcast. A couple weeks ago, I shared my fall knitting plans video, and this time I'm very excited to share an update on all of my fall knitting plans. Today I have a lot to share. I have 2 finished objects, 1 work in progress update, 2 new works in progress, a design update, and a refinished object. So that's not too shabby for nearly a month's worth of knitting. Jumping straight into finished objects with what I'm wearing. This is my Wedgewood Vest. I knit it in Fyberspates Vivacious 4-ply. This is the maple syrup color. I made the size 38, or it might be 37 3/4. I adjusted to have a shorter body length and then also used the modification in the pattern to, instead of having the split at the center front, having split at the side seams instead. I also lowered the front neckline, and instead of working the ribbed trims in the pattern, I did an icord finish instead. I just wanted a little bit more of a minimal aesthetic. So I'll stand up here so you can see what it looks like. It has a little split at the side, the little traveling detail. And yeah, I'm really pleased with the finished object. I've already worn it several times. It's super cute, goes great with my high-waisted pants. It is just the right length for me. And yeah, really pleased to have this one done. While I was finishing it, so like working the front panel, I again was not paying enough attention while I was knitting the shift rows like near the underarm, and I totally missed 2 shift rows. The total length wasn't quite long enough because I had missed those shift rows, because you start the armhole shaping right after you finish the shifting. And at first I was like, I'm not going to redo this. It's totally okay to have the front a little bit longer or a little bit shorter than the back. Then I was thinking that the angled stitching would fall higher on my bust because it like wasn't quite as far over towards the side seam without those 2 shift rows. And I decided that the best thing to do would be to just rip back the front panel. Like, I'd gotten all the way up to the shoulders. I was like getting ready to seam everything together. And yeah, so I ended up ripping all the way back to the underarms, knitting those 2 extra shift rows, and redoing the upper body because I thought that, you know, it's not that much extra work to redo the fronts, especially like they're not like, there's not that much fabric here. I mean, like once you're at the underarm, you're knitting a little bit until you reach the neckline, and then it's just these straps. So it's not a ton of knitting. And I knew that I would be much happier with the finished object going back and redoing it. So that's what I ended up doing. I just felt that it was going to work better for my body. I might as well just redo the upper body, do the right thing. And why not spend that bit of extra time for a finished object that I'm going to be happier with wearing? Also, just a friendly reminder that blocking makes a huge difference. So when I finished the front panel, I had already blocked the back panel, and I placed the just off the needles front panel on top of the back panel, and there's such a huge difference. I'll be sure to put in a photo somewhere over here to show how different the before blocking and after blocking measurements are. I didn't like have a tape measure or anything, but you can see on the fabric. And also, like, blocking is literally just washing and laying flat to dry and like maybe getting out a tape measure so that you can like check the measurements are the measurements that you want it to be, and just smoothing things out. You can honestly like ditch the tape measure, ditch the pins if you want to, just like wash, squeeze out excess water, lay flat to dry. That's blocking, but it makes such a huge difference in the overall fit and like the drape of the fabric, everything. So yeah, this completely transformed after I blocked it. Also, it made seaming really easy because everything was nice and straight at the end, and resulted in a really pretty top that I am so excited to wear. I know that we're like heading into fall and stuff, and tank top season is probably going to be like dwindling here shortly, but in the meantime it's still pretty warm, and there will be a good amount of time where I can also like wear this with a cardigan or things like that, so I'll still get a good amount of wear now that I've just finished it. And also, like, I have my entire life ahead of me to continue to wear the things that I've made. So just because I'm finishing a summer knit right at the end of summer doesn't mean that I'm not going to get to wear it and enjoy it in the future as well. My next finished object is Micahs Raglan Tee by Hannah G Knits on YouTube. I knit this for my daughter. She is almost 2, and I made the size 2 years, which is a 23-inch chest circumference, and I knit to like the length specified in the pattern. And the one thing that I did modify on this, I knit a little split hem. So you can kind of see that there, and you can also see those really pretty cable details that travel down the side of the garment. I really am glad that I added in the side vent. It just adds like ease of movement, and for like a toddler that's very active and wiggly, I mean, I don't know what toddler that is that age is not active and wiggly, but I'm glad that it just kind of like adds some extra movement ability without like catching or restricting around her hips. So glad that I made that modification. I highly recommend the pattern. It's really well written, super cute also. If I were to knit it again, I think the only thing that I would change beyond doing the split again, I really like that modification that I did. I think I would modify the gauge just so I could knit it on US 3s or US 4s. Hannah recommends a US 4 to achieve the gauge in the pattern, but I think like I'm just a looser knitter than she is, so I had to go down to a US 2. It was just not the most comfortable in my hands to use the US 2s. I mean, part of it also was like I didn't have the right circumference for the body, so that might have been it. But I do think that, you know, I could just see what gauge I get on 3s or 4s, and then like do a little bit of math to figure out what size that I would need to knit to end up resulting in the size that I wanted to have. And like the benefit of like going up a needle size would mean that I would get a bigger circumference with the same amount of stitches. So theoretically I could knit like this exact stitch count size that I knit here, and then just like have a garment that would fit my daughter when she's like 3, 4, or older, just by going up a needle size. So I think I might do that if I were to knit it again. And then the other thing that I would do is, and this is just because of like my daughter's proportion, nothing to do with the pattern, I would slim down the sleeves a little bit. My daughter just has really skinny arms, so she doesn't need as much ease as there is in the sleeves. Granted, a lot of children have not as skinny arms as my daughter, so you know, that's kind of just a fit thing to suit her individual shape. So I'm really happy with this finished object. I, again, think it's really cute. My daughter's already worn it a couple of times, and I actually need to wash this so she can, you know, wear it again. I haven't sent her to daycare in it yet. Toddlers are, of course, you know, messy and do messy activities, and, you know, I do want this to last through the season that she's wearing it, but at some point I'm just gonna be like, she can wear it to daycare, she can get it messy, I can try to do my best to clean it. Worst case scenario, I knit her another one. So very glad to have this done, and again, super cute pattern. Loved working on it, except for like the needle size thing, but that's on me, not on Hannah. The actual like knitting of the pattern is really cute. Love the cable twists. It's really thoughtfully put together and creates a really, really cute finished object. On to works in progress. This one has been on the needles for a little while. It is my Parsed Tank in Knotty Pine Fiber Company, the Advent from 2022. I've been kind of working on it like here and there in between all of the other things that I've been working on. And again, like kind of how I mentioned with this top here, we're heading towards fall, which means tank top season is winding down, which then means I'm like slightly less motivated to work on this. That being said, I will finish this season, even if I don't have like ton of time to wear it this year. And then also pushing the pattern release to the spring of just kind of like the urgency around the project has declined. But I'm very pleased with how this is turning out so far. I have completed the first 2 panels and I just joined them today with the 3 needle bind off at the center front here. So you can see that lovely slip stitch detail going around each side and the subtle color differences between the 2 sides. So I think it looks really, really pretty. Again, it's a slow gradient on each side, and you know, you just have the slight tonal shifts in a similar but not the same color palette. So really pleased with how this is turning out. I haven't yet cast on for the back panels at all. I haven't actually decided which neckline option I'm going to do for the back panels. I probably should go with the square neck option because then I can actually show what all 3 of the neckline options that are included in the pattern look like when I eventually do release the pattern in the spring. And I'll probably cast on for the first back panel today or tomorrow because like I want to keep working on this, I want to keep making progress, and I want to get it done this season and just not leave it languishing. I want to be able to get this done, get the pattern done, get it into testing, all of that jazz. I do have the pattern almost done. There are just a few things that I haven't completed yet to do, like yardage calculations and abbreviations and techniques and that sort of thing. But like the core of the pattern is complete. But I do need to get those other pieces before I can send it to my editor, and then she needs to go through and do her thing before it goes into preview knitting. So a little bit of time before that pattern is wrapped and ready to head into preview knit. So I'm excited that that is almost done, and I'm also excited that I have the front done, and that just means there's the back. It shouldn't take too long to knit the back panels. I mean, like, it might take a lot of days, but in terms of actual knitting time, it won't take a long time. I just have a lot of things on the needles right now. So let's get into those. I already have 2 works in progress on the needles for my fall knitting plans, and I shared all about my fall knitting plans in my last video, so I'll be sure to link that below if you're interested in taking a peek at what I'm planning to knit this fall. First up, I have a honestly getting close to completed tee. So this is my quotidian tee. I am working this in Pearl Soho linen quill in the color Raw Sienna. And I cast this on right after filming my fall knitting plans video, and I've gotten so much done. I mean, like, who knew that stockinette in the round would be so fast to knit? I mean, of course it's very fast to knit. That's kind of like why I cast this on, because I wanted something a little bit mindless and also just a wardrobe staple at the end of the day once I completed the project. I'll pop a photo here of the pattern photo, but this pattern comes with a ton of options, so I'm not knitting like the same thing as the original. I am going to be knitting a straight body version, and I'm going to crop it a little bit from like the length that's shown there, but in between the cropped length that's listed in the pattern and the high hip length, which is what the pattern photo is. And then I'm also doing a couple of other things. I am working a standard 1x1 rib hem instead of the half twisted rib with the pearl bump detail. And then I'm probably going to do icord trims, definitely at the neckline, maybe at the sleeves too, but I might do 1x1 rib at the sleeves. Haven't decided on that part yet. This will definitely have a different fit than the original one. It's going to be a lot easier because I knitted a slightly fitted waist option for the original pattern. This one is again going to be straight, so it'll be a lot easier fitting. I am knitting the same size, so I'm knitting a size 38, so like the bust, the ease around the full bust will be the same, but the amount of ease around the lower body is going to be kind of different than the original. So I'm excited to see how it turns out, and plain stockinette was definitely the right move for this yarn. So this is the yarn here. It is Pearl Soho linen quill in the color Raw Sienna, and it is slightly rustic, and in its current unblocked state, it's also like slightly structured right now. So I think it's going to soften up. By soften, I don't mean it's going to be like physically softer to the touch, though it might be. It's actually very soft to touch. The structure of the fabric is not like, it's not stiff, but it's just not relaxed and drapey. So I think that it will get relaxed or more relaxed and drapey than it currently is after blocking. So I'm very excited to see like kind of more, not necessarily oversized, but like more relaxed tee fit come out of this project. I've been making such fast progress on this. I'm probably going to have this completed by the next podcast episode. Like I just have the upper front. I can pop in like a photo or a video of me trying on like what I have now. I have the upper front and then the sleeves to knit, and this short sleeves, so it'll go really fast. So yeah, I will probably have a new top to wear in the next week or week and a half or so, maybe 2 weeks. This has been kind of like my main knitting project that I've been working on. Again, it's just like, it's stockinette, so it's so easy to just zoom on and kind of like not really have to think, which is why it's been so great to work on, why it's been so fast to work on. And yeah, I'm very excited to have my first fall knitting plan project already nearly complete. Next up in my fall knitting plans, I am working on a pair of socks. So this is the Wheatley socks pattern, and I am using Knit Pick Stroll in the cider color. And I'm so glad to have a sock on the needles right now, because it feels like progress happens so quickly, because like, might be because I'm using DPNs, but every time you get to the end of the needle, it's like, wow, I finished a row. Even though you haven't actually finished like a whole row, you still kind of get that excitement from completing a section. So you just like keep going because you're excited that you keep completing something. That's been fun to have a sock on the needles, especially an easy textured sock on the needles. I really love the stitch definition. It is so, so lovely. The yarn is a little bit splitty to work with, especially with the textured like knit purl pattern, and I knit combination style, so my pearls end up like reverse mounted, which then means like if I'm knitting like a knit stitch above a purl stitch, you just kind of have to like angle things differently. Anyway, not the end of the world, but it is definitely an annoyance that it is splitting. So it is very soft though, and I like the finished fabric, and I hope it will hold up well in the wash, especially since like I don't treat my socks super gently. I toss them in the washer and they get dried in the dryer. I do wash on cold with like a no enzyme detergent to like help somewhat, but if a sock yarn doesn't hold up well, I just like don't knit socks with that yarn anymore. So hoping that these will hold up well despite my less than gentle care with socks. This last one isn't a work in progress yet officially, but I did want to share some of my progress on the next design that I'm going to be working on. So this is going to be the Rockmill cardigan, and here's the swatch. I shared this also in my fall knitting plans video, and I mentioned then that I hadn't yet figured out like all of the design details and stuff. So I spent some time sketching and swatching to kind of work on the design details and construction setup for this design. So here is the little sketch that I did, and I sketched an option with ribbing and then also with garter stitch, and I decided I like the ribbing look better. So I will be going forward with the 1x1 rib, and I think on the button band I'm also going to do like a garter bump at the pickup and then go into the 1x1 rib just to add like a little extra delineation along that button band. I think it'll look really nice. We'll get there when we get there for actually casting it on and all of that. But I also knit up a swatch to work through the construction. So I'll show that here. I have a ton of yarn ends here. And this is a top-down cardigan construction. And you can kind of see I have one shoulder option here and a different shoulder option here. So normally I default to bottom up designs for the most part, especially if there's like a stitch pattern going on, just because it's significantly more intuitive to decrease in pattern where you already have everything established below where you're working, rather than increasing in pattern where you're kind of like having to imagine what comes next and how the stitches are supposed to fit together when you don't have anything below to serve as a reference point. So from that perspective, like I often will design bottom up with a stitch pattern. But for this design, I really wanted to anchor the stripe pattern a certain way. So like having that like stripe end at the shoulder. And if you end up with gauge differences, where you are in the pattern by the time you reach the shoulder may be different. So I thought that for this design and like the stripe goal that I had for the shoulder, it would be better to design it top down. I know that a lot of people like top down knitting because you can like try it on, and then also if you're worried about running out of yarn, you can like knit the sleeves of a sweater first and then just knit as long as you can for the body and that sort of thing. So I definitely understand the appeal. And for this one, because I wanted that stripe sequence to be a certain way around the shoulders, I thought it would be best to design it top down. So in the swatch, as I mentioned, there are 2 shoulder options, and I think I'm going to go with this one here because you get a nice little miter of the stripes around that central stripe here. So this is worked with short rows at the back, and then these up here are the fronts. I did this one with no shaping at the front. There's kind of like a construction trend right now where you knit the back typically with increases instead of short rows, and then you pick up for the front, and the front part is just like, there's not really shaping, or at least short row shaping or increased shaping at the front. And you typically have a steep slope at the back, and with a flat slope at the front, it kind of like ends up being a happy medium. So in this, instead of doing that construction, I'll just be doing short rows at the back and then picking up the front, also doing short rows at the front. So the slope at each side will just be equivalent, and you'll get that beautiful miter across the shoulder seam. So I'm excited to see how that develops. I'm at the point where I could cast on. I have done enough math that I could cast on, but I think I want to like get through all of the math before I actually dive into cast on. And that is simply because if I, take a pause now to actually start the knitting and work through all of that, by the time I get back to the math in a few weeks from now, I'm not going to be as familiar with like what I was doing, and it's just going to take time to be like, okay, where was my brain? Where was I in the grading and math process for this design? So I want to get through all of that first up front so that that's all done, and then I can just like dive in and enjoy the knitting with the math already completely done. So that is the plan here. Hopefully by next time I will have completed all of that math and started the cast on, because I am so excited to knit a sweater in this yarn, or it's really 2 yarns. I'm so excited to start it and see what it's going to start looking like as a sweater as opposed to just a swatch. Last thing I wanted to talk about today is a stash dive and revive segment. So it is just an update on last time. So I shared my knot front crop and knot front tee mashup. So I ended up redoing the armhole trims. When I had first done the armhole trims, I did the garter trim as specified in the pattern, and I like basically just bound off too tightly. I did go back and count to see like, had I actually worked the armhole length to the length specified in the pattern, and I hadn't. I was missing about a 1/2 inch in total circumference, so like 1/4 per side. But before I was like gonna just, rip out the neckband and like add that extra length back into both the front and the back, I decided to just rip out the trim on one side and see what it felt like without any trim on it. And it felt really good. So I felt confident in just going forward with the plan of doing the armhole trim only. So I'll pop a photo in here of the finished look. I'm so happy with the adjustment. It feels so much more comfortable to wear at this point, and I'm very glad that I took the time to make this fix. So over the last several episodes, I primarily focused on garment fixes, and I definitely have a few more projects that I could tackle, including just like some minor mending and that sort of thing. But I think my next thing to tackle for Stash Dive and Revive is tackling my yarn stash organization. So I mentioned this in my fall plans video that I really want to reorganize my stash. I've been storing everything in like bins and baskets in an IKEA cube system that I bought for my first apartment shortly after college in 2013. And I still like it, but I just find that having everything kind of like tucked away means that I'm not seeing the things that I already have, and I want to be inspired by these things that I already have. And like, I know that people totally do that with the IKEA cubes, having like a beautiful yarn display in the cubes, but mine are like, it's a, you know, 2x2 or a couple of 2x2 cubes, and that means they're low to the ground. And my cat and also my child have a tendency to dig through things, and then my cat also has a tendency to munch on yarn. Not like, you know, play with it, but just like munch on it. So from that, I think I need something open that is not as low to the ground. So I'm very lucky that my studio has a built-in desk situation where I have like a cabinet on the side of my desk. I think what I'm going to be doing is taking an area that I've been using basically as like office supply storage, and that's been like open shelving, and turning it into yarn storage instead. Why I was storing copy paper and that sort of thing on open shelving, that's like not cute. Who knows? It's been that way for a number of years at this point. But I think I'm going to take everything out of there and put all of the yarn that I can into there, and I think that will be very nice. It'll be off the floor. Yes, my cat technically can jump into it, but it's like not quite as accessible. So I think that's going to be my next project. If you have any like YouTubers who have done yarn stash organization projects and that sort of thing, I would love to see something that you've been really inspired by. If you have any systems that you've really liked in your own stash, I would love to hear about those as well. That is all I have to share today. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. You can always find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Carrie Knits, and if you'd like to stay up to date with everything that I'm doing in my design work, you can head to the description box below where you'll find a link to my newsletter list to sign up. Thanks again for watching.